Fretboard awareness for an example of A minor pentatonic, fingering 1 in the 5th position, using the C major scale. A minor pentatonic can also be C major pentatonic. Here's a list of songs that could use these, and after each song title it says whether it's in A minor or C major, or sometimes both, like Let It Be or the last song On Every Page. Some songs are ambiguous and sections of the song might be in A minor and other sections in C, or it might be up to the discretion of the listener. Someone that likes blues sad music might like it in minor, might like to take the minor perspective, and someone that likes happy music might like to take the major perspective. Like if you think about Let It Be, you might be able to imagine that. Which would mean, does it end on A minor or does it end on C? So for all of those songs, you can use A minor pentatonic to develop an improvisation in the 5th position. And on this top row of diagrams, there's 4 things shown on each one of those diagrams. Later you can learn how to predict 5 pages of such diagrams, which seems like a incomprehensible amount of information, but it's not. You just need to memorize the right 20 fingerings and know some basic theory to be able to predict the pages. It's just a bunch of patterns. But this one thing is pretty finite. Every diagram in that row has A minor pentatonic or C major pentatonic, could be named either one, in the 5th position, shown in the large black numbers. Disregard, you can see my hand cursor here, disregard the gray backgrounds, disregard the small numbers, which in this row are 4s and 7s, and other than that you see 6, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1. Those are the tones of the C major scale that make A minor pentatonic or C major pentatonic. And look across that row, every diagram has those in common. Secondly, if you play on every diagram all of the numbers and disregard the large or small or the gray backgrounds, you get the same thing, the C major scale. By the way, where you see that 7 on the 3rd string, it could be fretted as you ascend the scale in 2 ways. You can play reaching 1 fret to your left, which I call a head reach with the 1st finger, and then for the 1, come back up with the 1st finger again. So that's a head reach, reaching 1 fret towards the head of the guitar and keeping generally in 5th position, meaning your 1st finger's at the 5th fret. A second way to do it would be to play, here's from 5, 6, and then put your hand at the 4th fret and leave it there for 7, 1, 2, and then put your hand back up to the 5th fret. So 7, 1, 2 would be with fingers 1, 2, 4, and then at the 5th fret put your 1st finger on 3, and you have fingers 1, 2, 4 respectively for 3, 4, 5. That's the second way to do it. But in all those diagrams, playing the entirety of the diagram is the C major scale. Then we have the arpeggio subsets. The third thing, there's 4 things. The third thing is the arpeggio subsets. On each diagram, it's simply the notes that have gray backgrounds. So C major, you see at the top, it's 1 major on the C major scale. The chord built in the 1st step with 3 notes is 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. It just keeps repeating 1, 3, 5. On the second diagram, it keeps repeating 2, 4, 6, but it happens to start on 6, and that's D minor. 6, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. On the third diagram, it's E minor, and it keeps repeating 3, 5, 7. But notice the 7 is that pesky note that's out of position, so when you fret it, you'd use probably for 7, 3, 5, right here, 7, 3, 5, and then 7, you'd use fingers 3, I'll put my cursor on it, finger 3, finger 1, and then reach with finger 1 here and awkwardly come to finger 1 here. If you're playing the arpeggio like that, which would be rare that you would need to do that, it's awkward to use the same finger moving diagonally, like the first finger on 7 and the first finger on 3 here, but just keep it close to the fretboard. In fact, touch the strings gently as you move across from one to the other. So it's like a roll where you otherwise would play, say, 3 to 6 here, first finger tip, first finger pad, not lifting your finger but rolling the hand down using the wrist. This is like a roll, but instead it's fingertip and then pad, tilting your hand down so it goes to the pad of the index finger for the 3, but also changing position while you're doing it. Then you do that same thing on the G chord 2 chords later. But now we're on the F, which is 4, 6, 1, and it happens to start in the 6. So it goes 6, 1, 4, 6, 1, 4, 6, 1. And the G chord has that pesky 7 in the 4th position, so we'd use fingers for 7, 2, 5, we'd use fingers 3, 1, 1, and then reach the first finger over there to the 7, 1, and then back into 5th position, 3rd finger on the 2, the little finger on the 5, and the 3rd finger on the 7. Then the last one, A minor, is pretty much like an A minor bar chord, adding a note on the 6th string and the 1st string. 6, 1, 3, 6, 1, 3, 6, 1. 6, 1, 3, repeating over and over. Again, every other note in the cycle of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every other note is 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5. So memorize that. That's odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, and then the ones you just skipped, 2, 4, 6. That's the cycle we make chords from. It makes 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, 7, 4, 6, 1, 5, 7, 2, 6, 1, 3, and 7, 2, 4. Now the 4th thing, remember the 3 things were the pentatonic scale, which is all the black numbers on all these diagrams in the top row, the major scale, which is all the numbers, the arpeggios, which are the graybacks, and the 4th and most important thing for making core melody is the notes that are both in the pentatonic scale, which are the large black numbers, and they have a gray background. If you inspect each diagram above, you'll see that's what's shown below. And when you're improvising, you need to develop your improvising intuitively, creatively, through experimentation. Mostly spend time doing that, but spend a little time and study this stuff, and it'll greatly speed up your finding the sweet notes, the good notes to play to make a melody, the core, based on the core melodic tones. And for each chord, as you experiment, you'll be able to look at the pentatonic scale. I'm sure you have that pentatonic scale well memorized. And as you learn these arpeggios, if you get the arpeggios pretty well memorized, you can also look at a little region of 3 or 4 strings, and on that region, I'm distracted so I'm getting another page ready to show you in a second. On that region of 3 or 4 strings, if you know the pentatonic scale real well and you know the arpeggio pretty well, you can put those 2 things together in your mind. But to know those arpeggios better so you can do that, memorize these major and minor arpeggios. They're in that same chapter a few pages later. See, scrolling up, it's 20 things to memorize. Go to that section, 20 things to memorize, and memorize all those major and minor arpeggios, even with these weird fingerings you see at the bottom, because those show how they occur in the scale. They're not, if you played the arpeggio by itself, you wouldn't finger them that way, but in the scale. So these things at the bottom, you don't memorize so much by rote. Like, I know all of these things really well. They're burned in my brain. The weakest one for me is this 3 minor here. I use that the least. But memorize these things by experimenting and thinking of those 2 things. Like for this C major, think of the scale above here, the pentatonic scale, and then which notes of that are in the C arpeggio. If you know the C arpeggio, it's all of them. If you're playing in the A minor scale with D minor pentatonic on the first 4 strings, let's say you're focusing on, and you know the scale there, all the black notes up here, and then you think, okay, the D minor arpeggio is like See what you see here, the minor arpeggio in the, actually there's a mistake on that page, I'll fix that. And the minor arpeggio looks like this one here, all the gray notes, that's the minor arpeggio. And look at what's in common. And it's not the fours, it's the twos and the sixes, and that's what this is. So if you can imagine that D minor chord there and the pentatonic scale at the same time in your mind, just on the first four strings, you'd see, okay, this four is not in the pentatonic scale. I want to hit this 6, 2, and 6. I want to emphasize those. And then experiment and listen to those, and you'll see that those make sense. While if you want to play in key and you're on that chord, those notes will make sense to emphasize during the chord. And that's it for now.